93% of Generation Z report feeling overwhelmed by their own thoughts, not occasionally, not seasonally, but on a daily grinding loop. Researchers at the American Psychological Association have called your generation the most stressed in recorded history, and every headline seems to confirm it. But here is what those headlines always miss. They talk about your generation like a statistic. You are not a statistic, and the fact that you are still watching, still searching for a real explanation, that already tells me something different is happening inside you. You were not always like this. Think back. There was a version of you, somewhere around age 7, maybe 8, who ran into a room without first reading everyone's face, who said something without silently rehearsing it 3 times, who started a project and did not immediately spiral into every possible way it could go wrong. You were present, unfiltered, loud in the best way. Then, at some point you cannot exactly pinpoint, something shifted. Something taught you that the world required you to monitor yourself first, edit yourself first, predict the consequences first. You did not choose this, but you adopted to it, and the adaptation became so automatic you started to believe it was just who you are. Here is what the science actually says, and this matters more than any trend piece you have read. Psychologist Jean Twenge, who has spent over 2 decades tracking generational psychology, found that Gen Z is the first generation to have grown up entirely inside a world where every thought, every opinion, every choice came attached to a social feedback number. You learned before you were even conscious of learning it that your ideas needed to be pre-approved before they were expressed. Your brain did not malfunction. It did exactly what human brains are designed to do. It read the rules of the environment around you and built an internal system to survive those rules. The overthinking is not random noise. It's a learned response to a world that felt like it was always watching, always scoring, always ready to respond. But here is what nobody tells you, and this is the part that changes everything. The habit did not start with your phone. It started before that, in the quieter architecture of your childhood. Developmental psychologist Diana Baumrin's research on childhood anxiety environments shows that children raised in households marked by chronic unpredictability, financial stress, emotional inconsistency, high parental anxiety often develop what researchers call hypervigilance, a heightened state of internal alertness designed to detect threats before they arrive. You may have been the child who always knew what mood the room was in before you entered it, who could tell when something was wrong by the specific way someone put down a cup, who learned to prepare for conflict by running every possible scenario in advance. Your younger self was not being dramatic. Your younger self was being strategic. It's not a flaw, it's a blueprint your younger self drew to survive. And yet, honesty matters more than comfort here. That same blueprint, the one that protected you, is still running in environments that no longer require it. The CDC's most recent youth behavior data found that over 40% of Gen Z report persistent sadness and hopelessness. Researchers at Harvard Medical School have directly linked chronic overthinking to elevated cortisol levels, disrupted sleep architecture, and decision paralysis, a state where you can see every possible outcome with devastating clarity, and because of that, you can't choose any of them. You have felt this. You have abandoned something you actually wanted, a conversation, a project, a relationship, not because you lacked the ability, but because you thought about it until starting felt impossible. The cost of this is real, and you deserve to know that without someone wrapping it in softness. Here's the reframe, and this is the section they never publish. A 2017 study in the British Journal of Psychology found a direct and measurable correlation between high verbal intelligence and the tendency toward excessive mental simulation, what most people call overthinking. Psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman, who studies the neuroscience of imagination, describes this as the default mode network advantage. The same mental system that generates anxiety is the identical system responsible for creative insight, deep empathy, and complex problem solving. Your mind is not broken. It's running a more demanding operating system than most people around you. Every scenario you run, every conversation you pre-process, every outcome you anticipate, that is not weakness. That is your brain doing something rare. History's most disruptive thinkers across every field were people whose minds refused to stay on the surface. You are wired into that lineage, whether you've claimed it yet or not. So here is your new word, because the one you've been given doesn't belong to you. Society calls you an overthinker, too anxious, too sensitive, too in your head. The real word, the accurate word, is depth processor, someone whose mind is calibrated for complexity, who refuses the first easy answer, who feels the full weight of things that most people walk past without registering. That is not a disorder, that is a cognitive architecture. And in a world that desperately needs people willing to stop and ask the harder question, that architecture isn't your burden, it's your edge. So if you're still here, something in this recognized itself. Maybe for the first time, you're sitting with the possibility that the thing you've been most ashamed of is the same thing that makes you irreplaceable. You do not need to dismantle your mind. You need to stop apologizing for how far it reaches. Start small, one decision made without running every simulation, one thought allowed to exist without being cross-examined, not because your depth is wrong, but because you deserve to live in the present you have already thought through so carefully. There is nothing wrong with you. There never was. The question is no longer what you are. The question is what you will finally let yourself become. Drop one word in the comments that describes how your mind actually works. Let's build a new vocabulary together. You were never the problem.